Regardless of whether or not you believe them to be involved in a web of conspiracies to take down the throne, Grand Maester is an incredibly important position in King's Landing and for Westeros as a whole. For the king to have one learned man to advise him and guide him on all matters that might cross his desk. And in the current chaos at the end of A Dance with Dragons and the beginning of the Winds of Winter, we have had something that has not happened in a very long time happen, that being the death of a Grand Maester. Grand Maester Pycelle served 5 kings, which is a lot, and I think he's the most prolific Grand Maester in terms of Westerosi history writ large. They have a tendency to die pretty quickly, especially under kings like Maegor, but Pycelle was killed by Varys in the final chapter of the series as it is currently published. So today, I wanted to take a look at the organization as a whole and figure out who is going to be appointed as the next Grand Maester for the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. Before discussing what might happen, we should discuss how it happens, in that the position of Grand Maester is unique from all of the other seats on the King's Small Council. All of the other positions are directly appointed by the monarch themselves. The Grand Maester is in the hands of a different group of people. Rather than in the monarch's hands, this power is then vested in the Citadel itself. The Maesters that rule the Citadel call a conclave, which was very topical in terms of recent history, but yeah, they essentially select one of their own to go and serve as this main maester for the king in King's Landing, as there is a maester for each castle, and, the Red Keep is a castle, so we might as well do that. This is a very important ceremony. It doesn't happen all that often, and it will be very interesting to see. I'd be willing to bet we are going to see a conclave in action in the Winds of Winter, because now we have a viewpoint in Old Town at the Citadel, and maybe Samwell Tarly is attending the Maesters as they're selecting their next leader. While Pycelle served for a super duper long time, that reign as Grand Maester was not necessarily continuous. Tyrion Lannister stripped him of his rank and ended up throwing him in the red cells at one point in a Clash of Kings, and because of this, the Citadel called another conclave. They accepted the fact that Pycelle was no longer working the position, and then decided to appoint a new Grand Maester. And we hear from Varys' little birds that they got pretty far along in this process. They supposedly considered, quote unquote, but didn't really consider, 2 lowborn Maesters before settling on one Maester Gorman to be appointed as new Grand Maester. Apparently, Gorman was originally a Tyrell, an uncle of Lord Mace Tyrell, and Tywin wanted to nip that rose in the bud and ended up reinstating Pycelle as a Lannister toad is better than a Tyrell one. It's worth noting that this process is not instant. Westeros, like America, unfortunately does not have high-speed rail, and it will undoubtedly take a while for a new Grand Maester appointed by the Citadel to appear in King's Landing. We see Sam take an entire book to go from the Wall to the Citadel. That distance is about halved to King's Landing, so half a book seems reasonable, especially given the fact that we hear that Pycelle is just taken out of his position halfway through a Clash of Kings, and then the beginning of the Storm of Swords, we see that there is a Grand Maester who is ready to come but ends up getting shafted by Tywin. So I do think it will take a while for this to happen, and in the meantime, we may have some acting Grand Maesters, individuals who will be serving in that capacity, probably directly appointed by whichever monarch is ruling, but not given that direct authority by the Citadel themselves. There is another Maester we know who's been kicking around King's Landing since a Clash of Kings with the end of the Battle of the Blackwater, that being one Maester Balabar. Originally sworn to House Redwine of the Reach, he came with the Reach forces that ended up winning the Lannisters that battle. He's the one that actually treats Tyrion after his wounds on the Blackwater, and we hear that he is standing by ready to cure Tommen of any poison at his wedding to Margaery Tyrell. Balabar seems to be a reasonably competent guy. We really don't know a ton about him. He's not on page a ton, but I do think he is very likely to be filling those shoes early on in the Winds of Winter as far as we know, the only Maester at court in King's Landing. There are 2 more kind of Maesters in the vicinity of King's Landing who could also play a role in court politics early on in Winds. The first of these is Qyburn. He was a Maester, but he was stripped of his chain by the Citadel because he performed abominations, these experiments that ultimately result in the undead monstrosity that is Gregor Clegane, aka Robert Strong. He is very loyal to Cersei. I believe he's currently serving the position of Master of Whispers, but it's unclear what exactly he is going to do after whatever is coming next for Cersei. I do think Cersei is going to win her trial by combat by way of Gregor Clegane, aka Robert Strong, but after that, I think she'll probably be ousted from power fairly quickly, and I think that that'll end up with her and maybe Qyburn with her being on the run, because I don't think there's really anybody else in King's Landing who particularly likes Qyburn, other than maybe Jaime, because he saved Jaime's life after his hand was cut off. In a kind of similar boat to Qyburn, we have Haldon Halfmaester. This is an individual we initially meet way over in Essos, who has now made his way into the Stormlands, and we meet him in an Aerion sample chapter for the Winds of Winter, where he is kicking it at Griffin's Roost. He's called Haldon Halfmaester. We don't know a ton about his past. The chapter where he's introduced does a lot on his compatriot, Sir Raleigh Duckfield's past, but not a lot on his own. It's unclear if he actually studied at the Citadel, or if he's just a very learned man, but overall he does seem to be filling the role of a maester in the camp of Aegon VI Targaryen, and I do believe that Aegon is going to end up claiming the throne at some point around the halfway mark of the Winds of Winter, and when that happens, I could see Haldon being pointed to some position of authority in King's Landing. Obviously, he doesn't have the power to be appointed to Grand Maester without the Conclave giving him that say-so, but I could see him serving in that capacity for some brief tenure, and then maybe ending up as like Master of Laws or something, if he's still alive. I do want to do a lightning round of maesters that we know of who I don't think are going to be the Grand Maester. There are two that come to mind for me. The first of them is Marwyn the Mage, who's pretty famous in fan communities. He's very eccentric. He has all of these fixations on magic and the unnatural. He's the Archmaester of the Higher Mysteries. He has this rod, mask, and chain of Valyrian steel, and at present he is sailing off to meet Daenerys, where he has not yet arrived, but assumably he will at some point in Winds. He's pretty unpopular. We hear that the menagerie hates the Mastiff, with him being called the Mastiff as a nickname, given, I believe, by lazy Leo Tyrell. But regardless of that, I still don't think he is likely regardless, because he's way over on another continent. Additionally, I should mention Maester Walgrave. He's one of the maesters we know a little bit more about. Pate, the viewpoint for the Feast for Crows prologue, is studying under him. He's the current Archmaester of Ravenry, but he is senile and very old, and his mind is going, and I don't think that would be great in terms of actually being a Grand Maester, given the fact that they want somebody who's going to be able to do things. I hope you're ready for even rapider fire, because all of these guys are just effectively straight up question marks. The Appendix of A Feast for Crows, being our first and only book to feature Old Town, features a list of a bunch of Archmaesters who we know nothing about. We have not met these people, we do not know what their areas of study are, but that list includes, and this is a fair few, and I'm probably mispronouncing several of them, Agravain, Benedict, Castos, Cethares, Gallard, Garrison, Gwain, Harridan, Molos, Nymos, Ockley, Willifer, and Zarbello, the last of which is a pretty cool name. I do also want to ask, who do you want to see as Grand Maester in the Winds of Winter? Let me know in the comments down below. No one should repeat any names. I want to be surprised by these results. And while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe. It does really help the channel, and I just really appreciate it. There are a few more Archmaesters who we do know the expertise of and have a little bit more exposure to that I think are a little less likely to be made the Grand Maester. Specifically, Ebros is a big one. He is the head of healing at the Citadel. That is his main speciality. He is the Archmaester of that domain. He is also very old, and being a very gifted healer doesn't seem like it would be a skill that is super necessary in terms of a Grand Maester specifically. Obviously, Pycelle can heal a fair bit, and it is something that would be good to keep your king in good health, but regardless of that, I think that other elements, most notably maybe being a little bit more of a political mind and being able to dispense advice relating to such matters, could be more valuable rather than just being able to heal. Additionally, Maester Ryam is a mathematician. He has this yellow gold mask and chain, and I do think math is not a super vital thing to prioritize in a great master. And additionally, Valen is known to be pretty abrasive. Nobody really likes him. And he's an astronomer, which I think is even less useful than math or healing in somebody who's going to be an advisor to the king. I do think the most likely candidate for Grand Maester is Gorman Tyrell, given the fact that he was basically appointed as of the beginning of A Storm of Swords. We know he's still at the Citadel. We hear that he has taken over some of Walgrave's duties from Pate's perspective in A Feast for Crows in that prologue, and being a Tyrell, this could very much help that cause in King's Landing, as they are still making very big political moves and trying to secure their position. With that said, there are a number of wrinkles that could end up complicating Gorman's potential reign. First and foremost, Gorman is going to need to navigate a very treacherous political environment, given the fact that he will likely be arriving in King's Landing right around the time of a regime change. If he's lucky, he will arrive right afterwards, and he'll just be able to swear himself to King Aegon VI and not get beheaded as so many of his brethren were by Maegor. Worst case, he comes in around the time Aegon is marching on King's Landing, maybe after he's fought the Tyrells in battle and maybe killed Mace Tyrell, and maybe he ends up throwing in super hard with Tommen. Regardless, that's not a great idea. But even beyond that, there's another threat lurking in the shadows that could potentially end up costing Gorman his life. A faceless man could take his place. The ending of Pate's prologue chapter in A Feast for Crows sees him killed by a faceless man, and we see Pate, quote unquote, pop up again at the end of Sam's final chapter, which is the final chapter of A Feast for Crows. We know that this faceless man, who was once Jaqen H'ghar, is at the Citadel for a very specific reason. There is a book in a vault called The Death of Dragons that it seems the faceless men are trying to procure. We know that they came from this order of slaves, and they have reason to hate Valyrians and the Valyrian Empire and their dragons, and he could very much be trying to get into a position where he could take down a dragon or even more than that. Once he has this book, it's unclear what he's going to do next. He might have the book already, but regardless, it could be a good idea for him to kill someone important and end up taking their place instead of just being stuck as this acolyte Pate the Pig Boy. And that person could be Gorman Tyrell. Gorman is going to be in a pretty vulnerable position. He is traveling across the entire continent, going west to reach King's Landing. And also, we really don't know much about Gorman, who he is, what he's like, so I could see a world where Jaqen follows Gorman, takes his face and identity, and ends up ingratiating himself to Aegon and this new group of individuals who is ruling the realm. What's more, I believe that Aegon and Jaqen will have some common cause together, most notably because Aegon is a Targaryen who does not have a dragon. I do believe he is going to attempt to claim one at some point, but I don't think he is going to be successful. And I think because of that, Aegon will need ways to take down dragons. We already have Tyrion's Book of Dragon Lore, which he writes during his chapters in A Dance with Dragons, and later passes on to Jon Connington. That is a Chekhov's gun that is currently floating in the Aegon camp, and having that joined by the Death of Dragons and creating this essentially bomb of dragon knowledge meant to kill them could be a great way to see one of the dragons taken down in a way that is more logical than a miraculous scorpion shot by Euron. With that said, I believe the Winds of Winter is kind of being set up to be disastrous for Maesters as a whole. We have Euron potentially descending on Old Town, and this new Grand Maester going into a political earthquake in King's Landing, along with some general distrust in the north by people like Barbary Dustin. So I do think there's a lot of conflict ahead for this organization that is supposed to take no part, and I am very much looking forward to seeing it in the future of the series. I also have to say that this idea from the very end of Game of Thrones of Sam someday becoming Grand Maester, I think it's a pretty neat one. I don't dislike the idea in theory. I'm not huge on how they got there, given the fact that we did not see Sam forge a single link of his chain. I'd like to see Sam actually become a Maester first, and I could see him becoming Grand Maester as a good ending for his story, and he is one of the characters I am more confident will survive the entirety of A Song of Ice and Fire. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and it does really help the channel. I will have many more videos for you in the near future on A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, Dunk and Egg. I'd love to hear your suggestions for future videos in the comments. And while you're down there, I already said leave a like and subscribe. Check out the Patreon. That's another thing. Yeah, thank you again for watching. I will see you soon. Goodbye, everyone.